everybody. I wanted to take a couple of minutes and talk to you about just a couple of things that I'm noticing as I'm looking at these impromptu speeches, specifically regarding posture and eye contact. Things that I'm kind of going over in the lectures, but I wanted to just kind of demonstrate just a couple of things really quick, just to kind of help. Usually I'll do this if I see some people making the same kinds of errors as they are speaking, just so kind of like a whole class, like a reminder that this is what this needs to be like. First of all, let me say that I know that this first speech kind of threw you off your guard a little bit. You had no idea what I was going to ask you to do or talk about, and then you had very little time to think about it before you had to record your response. And so it seems a little mean for me to start off the semester like that. However, when you're thrown off your guard like that and you're forced to record, I can see all of the habits that you have when you speak more clearly, when you have time to rehearse, when you have time to think about something and plan. It's very different than just being kind of thrown into the mix. And so then that way I can get a really true representation of your communication skills, so that we'll know exactly what we want to work on and what we need to strengthen throughout the course of the semester. Speech is kind of awkward in front of a camera. It's not traditionally meant to be done this way. Back in the day, when I took speech, I was in a classroom full of like half the JSU football team, and it was very awkward. But it's those awkward situations when you're in front of somebody, you kind of have to learn things on the fly. And we're attempting to recreate that in this setting, which is a little different because we never really have an audience. There's nobody in here that I'm talking to. Instead, my attention is focused and directed on a camera. So we're kind of replicating it, but it's not going to be the same thing. But the skills and the techniques that you're going to learn over the course of the semester are going to help you moving forward in any kind of speaking situation, even just talking with in an interview, or talking with your professors or even your peers. The things that we're going to learn over the course of the semester are going to be very helpful for you in improving your public speaking skills. So the first thing that I want to talk about is make sure that you're standing when you are giving a speech. You will never be asked to give a speech sitting down. So make sure that you're standing in your camera. Place your camera on a surface that is high enough at eye level. You also want to be close enough to your device so that your volume is at an acceptable level. Not too close, because then you're probably too loud. Not too far back, because your volume will be too soft. But just a distance of, and I should probably be able to see maybe like mid-hip up when you are doing your presentation. So find a place in your room or wherever you're recording your speeches to prop up your device, raise it up. Mine's currently raised up on a stack of books, and I've got it kind of tilted forward so that I'm not I can look directly at the camera eye level. And that way I can tell about your posture, because posture is really important, and it's something we want to get right. A lot of times when we're sitting down, we're sitting in a chair, our tendency is either to slump, right, to lounge, because our brain tells our body, like, this is the time that we relax. Or we're trying too hard to be formal and we're sitting up ramrod straight, and that's not something that we want to do. So we want to stand up. We want to be mid-hip up in the video, and be mindful that I can see everything behind you too in your room. That hasn't happened this semester, but in the past, it's like one of those crazy Zoom videos where you accidentally see somebody on the toilet. Just remember that I can see inside of your room as well, so keep that in mind. So set you aside a place that you can clean up and set up to do your speeches as we go along. All right, and your posture. One thing about posture that's really important is that you never want to appear ramrod straight. So a lot of you, like when you're nervous, you want to hold yourself kind of really tight so that you don't move because you're afraid that you're going to talk with your hands. But being too stiff or too ramrod straight makes you look awkward. It makes you look less than human. So you're a human being. You're going to naturally move. You're going to naturally blink and things like that. So standing too straight is not something that you want to do. Instead, what I suggest that you do is to kind of adopt a pose where your hands are kind of making an O shape right about your mid hip level. And what you want to do with your hands is either softly interlace your fingers, not a grip, not tight, just softly interlock your fingers or touch your fingertips together. Okay, I know that sounds kind of awkward, but it's very purposeful. So your hands below on your waistline like you're holding a ball, and you're either interlaced slightly or your fingertips are touching. What that's going to do is going to tell your brain that your hands are occupied, because they currently are occupied, right? And you're going to be focusing all your restless energy into that connection. If your hands are like this or touching like this, then our brain says our hands are busy, they have something to do. And you're less likely, if you're thinking about that connection, you're less likely to gesticulate wildly with your hands, because your hands already have something to do. It also gives you a more relaxed pose up and down. I'm not ramrod straight, I'm not too stiff, I do allow some movement. I'm not going to come off as awkward or, weird looking. All right, so you don't want to fist, you don't want to clasp, because that will tighten everything up and make you look a lot more rigid. So just a loose touch or an interlace there. Okay, gesturing and movement, some of it is really natural, but you have to think about your audience as well. A couple of things can happen if you start gesticulating wildly, or you're doing things like messing with your hair, dangling a bracelet, adjusting your watch, checking the time, hands in your pockets, hands across your chest. Everything that you do sends a message to your audience, and you're going to learn about that in verbal and nonverbal communication in the lecture series that I've given you. Everything that you do, whether you intend for it to send a message, does send a message. So you have to kind of think about that. Your hands in your pockets make it kind of seem like you don't really care about what you're talking about. You're just kind of slouching with attitude, whatever. Hands crossed over the front of your chest means that you're not in the mood to do this speech. Somebody told you to do it, and that's what you're doing. Playing with your hair. Girls, I know it's a comfort mechanism, right? We reach up to kind of pat our hair down because we want to smooth it out, but it's soothing to us, right? I'm nervous, so I'm soothing myself with a comfort mechanism that I really enjoy doing. All of that sends a message, and so we want to think about when we move purposefully. So gesturing, we're using that sparingly if we wanted to highlight a point first or next, okay, instead of gesturing the whole time, because that can get distracting, or we could be sending a message with our movement that we don't intend to send. Okay, the next thing that I want to talk about is eye contact. I know this situation is kind of weird because you are talking to yourself. Essentially, if you're videoing yourself, you can see yourself in the screen. A little tip and trick that I tell my students to do is to, instead of looking directly at the camera screen where you can see yourself talking, because you're more likely, if you're watching yourself, like I'm watching myself right now, if I'm watching myself right now, I can see that I'm making too many movements, I'm making too many adjustments, it's going to throw me off. I might stutter or stammer when I'm trying to catch back up. I don't want to do that. I don't want to look at myself on the screen. I need it to be there so that I can tell, like, if something distracting is happening in the background or whatever. I can adjust myself if I need to, but I don't want that to be the center of my focus. So I tell my students to always imagine that there is a line, a little invisible line directly above the camera that you focus your eyes on. And instead of staring stiff straight at that one spot, you'll follow that line, trace that line with your eyes slowly, not darting left and right, back and forth, but you're tracing that line very slowly back and forth over the top of the camera. It looks like you're looking directly at the camera, but you are not looking specifically at the camera and more specifically at yourself while you're speaking. And that works in an audience too. If you've got stage fright, if you're nervous, you don't look directly at the faces of the people that you're talking to. You look just slightly above their head. So it appears to them like you're giving them direct eye contact, but you're actually not looking directly at them. It's a good little trick to have. Also, when you're talking in a big room, if you've got a room full of people, you also want to think about the immediacy that you have with your audience. And this is just a tip for public speaking in the future. Public speaking is all about the connection that you make with your audience. You want them to invest in you. You want them to believe in what you're saying. You want them to believe that you have the authority of what you're saying. And eye contact is a very good way to do that. Eye contact denotes that you're confident, you're strong, you're prepared, you're all those things. Okay? So if you're in a large crowd, what I always suggest that you do is that you follow a Z pattern with your eyes so that you encompass everybody in the room in your conversation. And you do that slowly, looking just above the heads of your audience members. So you start in one corner, you follow the whole room, you come back at a diagonal to catch the people in the middle, and then you do the back part of the bottom part of the Z. Okay, and that really will help you. It's a good little trick. You never have to uncomfortably look at somebody in the face. A lot of us, when we're speaking to people, we find one person that makes us feel really comfortable talking to them, and then we focus our attention on that one person, and that can get creepy. We talked about that in one of my lectures about how intense eye contact can really be. So think about that. Think about when you're recording your speeches, about that invisible line that you're following, and not a long one. I'm not talking about side to side. I'm talking about this much space that your eyes are moving very slowly between those two spots on that line, so that you're not intensely staring to an uncomfortable level, but you're also comfortably moving, so you're not too stiff and you're not robot-like. All right, the last thing that I want to talk about is your volume level. It's really hard to recreate the feeling of a public speech in this kind of situation, but you always want to think about every time you stand up to give a speech in this class, you always want to think about or pretend that you're giving it in a classroom or in an auditorium that does have an audience and does have people in it. So you want to practice projecting your volume, not shouting, okay, raising your voice. It has nothing to do with that. Projecting your voice so that you're easily heard from a distance. Okay, so you can work on that, being easily intelligible, understood, projecting your voice so that you're not talking in a really soft tone where people can't really understand you, and you're not shouting, right, at somebody, that you have a nice, easy, smooth volume as you are speaking. Okay, one last thing, I would suggest that you start practicing about 3 to 5 minutes a day. I've been putting some resources in the speaking resources module on Canvas. I try to figure out things that maybe would be beneficial and helpful to you. So that's what I normally drop in there, and I'll send out an announcement when I post something new. I just put in a resource on inflection and intonation, which are ways to put emphasis on certain words to have a nice, so that you're not speaking in a monotone voice the whole time you're talking, and you're not uptrending or upward inflecting on your words, which makes you sound unsure of yourself with what you're saying. So those are things that I went over in that resource for you, and some practice things. But start practicing. Grab yourself a mirror, even if it's just picking up a book and reading it and trying to maintain eye contact as you're reading, recording yourself so you can hear the way that you sound back to you. Practice is going to make perfect in this class, okay? And we'll be back in touch with some more information as I see things as we go along. Hope you have a good rest of the week, and I will talk to you soon.